Amid the heated discussions about possible peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, which have flared up again in August 2025, let's take a look at whether there's a chance for peace to be reached soon, or if the war will just be frozen. At the time of filming this video, it's August 13th, 2025, so let's first figure out why people have started talking so actively about peace negotiations right now. What prompted this? What influenced people's minds? Why is it that only now they're starting to talk about peace negotiations? Why didn't they start talking about this so actively back in July? Why didn't they start talking about it so actively, say, in November 2025? Why right now? The thing is, on August 12th, there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Venus. And overall, this is a classic configuration for making peace. But we've already discussed this Jupiter and Venus conjunction in one of our previous videos. And you know, this conjunction is quite special because the last time it happened was in the summer of 1942, and we discussed that, one way or another, this configuration will bring about the strengthening of the US economy, the strengthening of US power, because it was precisely in the summer of 1942, when this configuration was active, that the US economy rose from the ashes. Rose after the Great Depression in the US. So, what has happened now? How did the US profit this time? We know that on August 8th, a peace agreement was signed at the White House by the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Armenia. And the US is getting a good benefit from this, namely control over the Zangezur corridor. This is a transportation route through Armenian territory that connects the rest of Azerbaijan with the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and this corridor has been leased to the US for 99 years. Additionally, the US will manage the infrastructure, meaning railways, oil and gas pipelines, and fiber optic lines. And, of course, this creates economic benefits for the US. Furthermore, it's not just about economic benefits, but also geopolitical advantages, because this peace agreement, strengthens the US position in the South Caucasus, pushing Russia and Iran out of the conflict resolution process. This shows that the US is gaining dominance in this region. In addition, the US has lifted restrictions on defense cooperation with Azerbaijan. And what does that do? It opens the door for military and financial aid to Baku, increasing Washington's influence. So, as we can see, the US has gained quite a lot from this peace agreement, but now they're going even further and trying to act as mediators in peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. And let's take a look at what lies ahead, what trends await both Ukraine and Russia, and whether a truce or a frozen conflict is possible. We'll start with the nearest celestial event configuration. That's the new moon. The new moon will be on August 23rd. Its influence will begin a week before and last for a month after. This new moon, in Ukraine's horoscope, will occur in the house that is directly responsible for the country's borders and its neighbors, for relations with neighboring countries. And this new moon forms a tense aspect to the planet of war, which is also located in the house of war. So, this isn't really about peace talks, it's about difficulties, about complications in military affairs. Also, Uranus will influence the planet of war, creating some unexpected and dangerous military situations. In addition, a trigger planet will also activate the karmic planets in the country's horoscope, indicating certain deprivations and, even more so, the impossibility of reaching agreements, pointing to an escalation of the war. So, this is not about freezing the war. That's not what's being discussed here. Let's take a look at how this new moon will affect Russia's horoscope. In Russia's horoscope, this new moon will be in the house responsible for expenses, losses, as well as relations with distant countries. And this new moon creates a tense aspect to the planet that is responsible for the ability to reach agreements, for negotiations. So what does that mean? Russia also won't get what it wants and won't be able to come to an agreement. In addition to that, Uranus is also influencing the planet that governs the negotiation process. So, unexpectedly, it doesn't get what it wants. And the trigger planet is also affecting the planet of war, which also points to the military situation. The only thing we should note is that the planet Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, is influencing the natal Jupiter in Russia's horoscope, which is located in the house of government. And here, we have to honestly say that during this time, the Russian government will have some opportunities and gain some power. The next configuration we need to look at is a very serious one, a lunar eclipse, a very important event. The lunar eclipse will occur on September 7th, 2025. Its influence will begin a month and a half before and last for half a year after. And this lunar eclipse will directly affect the planet of opportunities in Ukraine's horoscope. And this planet is located in the house of neighbors and borders. And when a new moon influences such a point in this way, it indicates a loss of opportunities regarding relations with neighbors. This points to a tense situation with neighbors, and also to a tense situation at the country's borders. There may even be some losses of positions at the borders. So, in this case, this eclipse will have a negative impact on issues related to neighbors and borders. But also, during this lunar eclipse, the planet of illusions will influence the planet of war. What does this mean? It means that both Ukrainians and other nations, when it comes to discussions or considerations about the war, people will be under illusions, people will believe in something, as if they will even feel inspired. But with this configuration, you need to be very careful, because this configuration, this planet, is all about the fact that while it has influence, people are deceived. It's like a haze. And when this planet passes, when this aspect passes, people start to face reality, the reality that actually exists. And then all these illusions just shatter. And by the way, this is also indicated by the configuration that forms in Ukraine's horoscope around August 19, 2025, which also points to illusions regarding the war, negotiations, the possibility of reaching an agreement, or signing some kind of treaties. So there will be deception here. It's all an illusion. This whole period should really be under the motto, look to the root of things. Because at this time, everyone will genuinely want to be deceived. It will be a time of deceive me attitudes. But in order for us to plan properly, to save ourselves, to protect our loved ones, and in this way, to save the world in general, we need to look to the root of things. And that's very important. And that's very difficult in our time, because on one hand, people are shouting that there will be peace talks, that the war will end. On the other hand, people are saying that there will be a third world war in Europe. And then there's a third group of people who say that in November, there will be UFOs, and they're going to attack the whole world. So, what do we need to do in this whirlwind? In this whirlwind, we can't hear ourselves. In this whirlwind, we completely lose the kernel of truth. We lose the core. So what do we need to do? We need to disconnect from all this information, and we need to consciously listen to our inner self, listen to our heart. What is it saying inside us? What is it that our inner self is telling us? The part that's not buried under the layer, under the husk of all this information, especially information that contradicts itself. Going back to the eclipse, to the lunar eclipse on September 7, 2025, which, let me remind you, will have an influence starting a month and a half before and lasting for half a year after. This lunar eclipse also affects the horoscope of Volodymyr Zelensky. It happens directly in the house of his governance, creating difficulties for him and forming a tense aspect to the planet that indicates illusions about the possibility of reaching agreements or deals will be shattered. Here, it even seems like there is deception involved regarding negotiations and deals. This is what Volodymyr Zelensky's horoscope indicates. In addition, the planet that is responsible for mafia-like power, for dictatorial power, which moves through the House of International Relations or International Trade in Zelensky's horoscope, this planet influences the planet of war, which is located directly in the House of Neighbors. In other words, this configuration once again points to serious and dangerous situations at the country's borders, speaks of deprivations at the borders, and indicates complicated relationships with neighboring countries. That's what this is about. And hypothetically, we can consider that this planet is responsible for the mafia, the one that represents the mafia. It is positioned in the House of International Relations and directly influences war, the planet of war with neighboring countries. So, here we can guess what might be going on. In Russia's horoscope, this lunar eclipse from September 7, 2025, it takes place in the house that is directly responsible for war. That's it. But let's also consider that during this time, transiting Uranus will be aligning precisely, will be exactly conjunct with the planet that is responsible for the ability to reach agreements. So here, there's an unexpected outcome regarding agreements, an inability to come to terms on what they would like. We also need to pay attention to the solar eclipse that will occur on September 21st, 2025. Its influence will begin about a month and a half before September 21st and will last for half a year afterward. In Vladimir Zelensky's horoscope, this solar eclipse, through a trigger planet, indicates that difficulties in relations with neighboring countries will continue. In Russia's horoscope, this eclipse is more influential because the eclipse itself creates a harmonious aspect to the planet that represents the possibility of reaching agreements. And we should mention that during this time, Russia will be able to reach agreements on the matters it desires. There will also be some successes related to international trade and international agreements. Overall, if we look at the horoscopes of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, and Russia, we can say that a freeze or an end to the war is not expected in the near future. Also, if you want a personal consultation, there will be a link to my website in the description of this video, where you can choose the consultation that suits you best. I would be happy to make a forecast for you.